Hey, and there it is. So, a general introduction to semiotics for graphic designers, and this is important because this is the most scientific part of graphic design that exists. Not only is it the science of graphic design, but it's also the means to which most forms of literary analysis occur. So this is the base of how we understand essays and plays and film scripts and poetry. It's how we use our words to say more than what the words mean. Because if I use the word dog, you all have a picture in your head. Some of you might be thinking about poodles. Some of you might be thinking about Labradors. Some of you might be feeling afraid because you've been bitten by a dog. And I've said none of those things. So semiotics is the way that we almost pull an emotional response out of a word, but not just a word, because we are graphic designers. So therefore it's how emotion happens in things, drawings. And I guess even here we have drawings. Obviously we have some very evocative images, a white baby on a black nipple, a cross, and a very cute skull and crossbones. They're all very evocative things. But this stuff here on the left, these squiggly lines, these are pictures too. They're pictures of sounds of which we speak. They actually have no real meaning. It's just that we're conditioned to understand them as the sound t or b or f. So semiotics in the literary sense is the study of signs and symbols, their use and interpretation. That's exactly what I've just said. Within design, it's the study of images, their use, interpretation and meaning. When graphic design is good, it uses very few elements to say something very, very deep. It is a poetic form. Even the word graphic, something that is graphic, it doesn't mean that it's exceptionally violent or other things. It means that it's rendered into very few forms. It's either black or white. It's simple shapes. That's what graphicness means. On the opposite, we have the idea of the photographic, which is 16 million odd colours, and that too has its own depth of meaning. And the way a photograph is constructed, we don't just look through the window and press the button, well, unless we're on holiday. The way a photograph is constructed is a means, as a narrative device, and it's through the use of signs and symbols. Semiotics, or semiology, is the study of signs or symbols and its signification. We'll get into those words in a bit. It is the study of how meaning is created. How, not what is created, because, again, these two symbols, it's the meaning behind them that makes great interest. So with the hammer and the sickle, how it comes about is through Russia's history of seeing that agriculture and industry are the main foundations of a progressive society. They didn't think that competition and profit were, and sadly that led to a very entropic state, and especially in East Germany, when doctors are paid the same as street cleaners, are paid the same as dentists, are paid the same as teachers. There was no need to excel because everybody was the same. The other one, the skull and crossbones, that has a really interesting history to it, because where do we think it comes from?
Pirates.
Pirates. Who were the first pirates? What's
Tongans.
that? Tongans. Oh, I think your Tongan history could be better than mine. Outside of Tonga, where do the pirates come from? And not Hollywood.
Vikings.
Vikings. No. But they were a form of pirate. Comes from Christianity. comes from the Crusades, when the Knights of St. John were on their boats across the Mediterranean, and they saw anything that looked like a Turkish boat, up went that. And it basically meant, we're going to get you, you're going to die, or you're going to enter slavery, and we will take everything. It's a very Catholic, it's a very French symbol. The Jolly Roger comes from the phrase, the happy blood, the Jolly Rouge. We're very happy to spill your blood. But luckily, like all cultures and things, Christianity has moved on. There's two main people, and these are two main people within the 20th century. The study of signs and symbols goes right back to Plato. But Ferdinand de Saussure and Charles Sanders Peirce, it's pronounced Peirce, it looks like Pierce. I'd rather say Pierce because I feel like less of a fool. They almost create the study of signs and symbols at the same time. We're going to look more at Saussure because Peirce's version is kind of tricky. It makes more sense if you first look at it, but then a rule is set saying, no, this word doesn't mean what you think it does. And then it's all, oh. But you'll see what I mean. Ferdinand de Saussure, he says that a sign is the whole that results from the association of the signifier with the signified. The relationship between the signifier and the signified is referred to as signification. That was significant. That's a phrase that we might use every now and again because it was something that is total and whole and moving. And this is represented in the Saussurean diagram by the arrows. So signification is the process of the signifier working with the signified. So that means the sign meaning something. If I showed you the skull and crossbones and you went chocolate or my birthday or table, the process of signification would not be complete. And there's often we often get that feeling ourselves when we do a drawing and someone goes, oh, it's a turtle on fire climbing a ladder. And it's like, well, no, actually, it's your portrait. And therefore, our sign-making process has failed. We have not communicated what we have wanted to communicate. Semiotics is the science of communication. In other words, a sign is composed of two parts, the signifier and the signified. The complete sign is a result of the relationship between the two parts. And if we think about that, there are some really strong signs in our world. I mean, obviously there are stop signs. It's got 8 sides, it's red, it's in a typeface called either DIN or another one, and it says stop. And even if we couldn't read it, if we were all kind of blurry for some driving reason, we'd see it and we'd still know to stop. It has an ingrained sense within us. Signs can change. For about 4,000 years, the swastika was a symbol of good luck and prosperity. In the last 60 or 70 years, it's come to mean something else. And it's very, very hard to wash that sign clean. That's the way it goes. If we go back here, we have the skull and crossbones, which, as you've seen from one historical point of view, means something a bit nasty, well, quite nasty. But if we travel forward a few years, it could also mean, don't drink this, don't walk here, don't eat this. But then right at the very beginning, we have the symbol being washed clean, in that it's a cute thing to put on girls' hair clips. Really? Your head is poisonous? No, it's a cutesy skull and crossbones. So, we must also consider how the sign is made. And again, let's think about those squiggles, those unintelligible ghibli bits up above this diagram, they have a semiotic language as well. So what is a sign? Signs take the form of words, images, sounds, odours, flavours, acts or objects, but such a thing have no intrinsic meaning and only become signs when we invest them with meaning. So even the way a person walks is a sign. So we have to have this societal agreement on what mopey is before we can hunch our shoulders and stare at our feet and just walk really slowly. Sir?
Could you explain what intrinsic means?
Intrinsic. It's a really good question. It's like absolute. It has no absolute. It has no galactic standard to it. There is, you know, it's something that is not intrinsic, means that we put, like fire, we know is intrinsically hot. It is part of its existence. Something that has no value like that, it's therefore has an artificial, a societal value put upon it.
Something that's intrinsic is essential.
Yes.
Essence.
Yes. Yes. And here we have three signs. So the first one is cat. Well, okay, it's a bunch of squiggles if you ask me. What's the second one?
Silhouette.
Yeah, well, that's very good. It is a silhouette. That's the initial one. Anyone know it's a silhouette what of? Who said that? What kind of liquor? Grolsch. Yes. So we understand that this is a beer bottle. But the third one, who knows what that is? You've drawn a really interesting parallel.
What did he say?
Illuminati. But no. Yes, but no. It does have something to do with the secret, with the once secret society. Anyone else care to guess? Let's move along. A sign is the smallest unit of meaning. Anything that can be used to communicate or tell a lie. If there are still ways to communicate before you get to the ultimate truth, then we're not down to its absolute sign value. You can have combinations of signs, but to get right down to the nub of what a sign means, there is no other way to break it down. It's like getting down to the atoms. So if I said black Persian cat, if we looked at our previous slide, there are still ways that we can break around, because there's suddenly the whole idea of black meaning darkness and comfort and warmth or isolation or death or evil, and then the whole idea of what a Persian cat is, let alone what it means to be Persian. So if we can boil it right down to just cat, then that's what I'm talking about here, the sign being the smallest unit. The signifier, any material thing that signifies. That's a bit inductive as a loop. E.g. words on a page, facial expressions and images. So our semiotic relationship here is that the smiling face means happy, easy business. In the monkey world, the smiling face means something quite different, which is, I'm going to mess you up if you do not go away from me right now. But we're not monkeys, we're humans. So this is a good image. Purse. So we can see the third thing here. Added another dimension to this relationship. He added a third element called the interpretant. Now that does not mean how you interpret things. It doesn't mean the interpreter. It doesn't mean us, the participant. Instead, it is to do with this thing called the process, when you get the whole picture. So it's not this corporal being I happen to be, but it's some part inside my brain that goes, oh, It means this, which I'll leave it there. Those of you that are interested in this as a topic, and as graphic designers, you really do have to be quite interested. I have a PDF that's some 200 pages long. Yeah, it's a little one, and it goes to serve as a very good introduction. Now, you might not want it this year, but you're going to be here for 3 years. So unless they do fire me into the sun, come and see me sometime later for that reading. Here's a page from that PDF. The interpretant is the trickiest of the lot. It is not the interpreter, rather it is the proper significant effect. So they're saying what I'm saying in a far more trickier way. It is a good starting place, although it is more accurate to consider that the interpretant is the kind of proper result. I might point at the sky, for instance, and rather than simply registering the signification of the sky, you may look at the direction of the pointing finger, thus the interpretant. So there's 3 levels of the interpretant where we're all out camping. And I say, look at that. And some of you will look up and see my finger. That's the first. Some of you will look up and see the sky. That'd be the second. And some of you would know exactly that I'm pointing to Proxima Centauri. And that's the 3rd deepest level. But we're not dealing with that. This is first year. This is the 2nd week of first year. Let's not ruin your brains too quickly. With the sign and the symbol, the signifier and the sign, there's this parallel that happens. Denotation and connotation. What's being said and how it's being said. Because again, that is a sign-making process. Who has ever experienced sarcasm? Yeah, probably all of us. Wait. Who's had a parent? Yeah. Maybe I'm just criticizing myself. But the thing is, consider
Who's had children?
What? Who's had children?
Yeah.
Oh, right, you got kids?
Yeah.
Rock and roll, man. I've got to see some photos. I'll show you some of my daughter. Love kids. I guess you have to, being a parent. But if we have the sentence, you've done a good job, and then we have the way it's being said, we know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. Who's ever read an email the wrong way and taken great offence at something that wasn't meant? Yeah.
Like text messages.
Yeah, text messages. There is, the connotative context. So how it's being said, you've taken it as one way, but it was actually meant in another. I often have a little thing at the end of my email saying, please read this slowly. If you read it too quickly, it'll seem like I'm shouting. I'm just paranoid. Denotation is the surface meaning of anything that can be seen, heard, smelled, or touched. It is the first meaning of an object, what the symbol represents. For example, the word book. Denotation is devoid of reflection and opinion and is bare facts of any represented thing. This is the signified element of the semiotic process. If we were talking about photography, it's what is being photographed. If we go back to the skull and crossbones again, we've got 2 ways it's been shown. There has been the denotative value of a skull and crossbones. We've all got a picture in our head. But the connotative one, the deeper metaphoric meaning, when it's very realistic, it's poison or something. But when it's all cutesy, it's something for little wee girls. Or you'll find it at a Morning Glory store. Or even maybe Hello Kitty might be wearing it on her bag or something. Connotation, even Hello Kitty, but we'll stop there, is the deeper metaphoric meaning of anything that can be seen, heard, smelled, or touched. It is the second meaning of an object, not what the symbol represents, but rather what the symbol stands for. For example, the image of a rose. Instead of simply representing flower, which is what its denotative value would be. It also embodies the ideas of love, passion, romance, royalty, war, Shakespeare, sex, youth, and death. Man, there's a couple of other things that I'll keep my mouth shut on. Depending on, and bugs in agriculture. Depending on, and Palmerston North, which is known as the rose capital of New Zealand. Never go there. Anyone here from Palmerston North? Yeah. Depending on the condition of the rose, further value can be added to wider terms. Connotation is where typeface starts to come in. This is the signifier element of the semiotic process. The power of connotation is that it enables the reader to more easily consider abstract and aesthetic concepts and introduces subtlety to the discourse. Who's ever received an email that's all capitals?
Yeah.
Yeah. Were they shouting at you?
I thought like I was getting used.
Oh, okay. So simply, denotation, the most basic literal meaning of a sign. But I've already tweaked you a little bit in this one picture because the background's pink, which has its own feeling to it. So adding these two pictures together, we're already in a quasi-romantic situation. Suddenly I feel weird in front of my students. The second culturally significant meaning of the second cultural meaning of signs or signifying signs that used as signifiers. So passion. And again, pink is a nice little tweak. In both structures, there is a need for commonality between the author and the reader. For denotation, it is a matter of mutually agreed upon code of communication. So, English. I cannot speak to you in Gaelic. You wouldn't understand. I could try and stumble through in French, and some of you would laugh at me because your French is better. Text language. If we go LOL or WTF, we understand, but if someone said BML, you'd be going, what does that stand for? Oh, I was thinking break my legs. Yeah. I shouldn't have shown that pink picture now, should I? So the key in a map, we see a map and there's a little wee triangle, and we know that means this is where we burn witches, or it's a mountain, I forget which one it is. In the case of connotation, meaning is context dependent. You did a great job. What does that mean? There's a context being added, especially if someone spilt milk all over the floor. The addressee must learn how to match the meaning intended by the addresser to one of the various possible meanings held in memory. And that sentence is so important. As graphic designers, we act as an intermediary. We are employed by one person to speak to another. So we have to understand what the client is wanting, and then we have to transmogrify that into what the audience can hear or see or understand. Sir?
Can you repeat that?
Which part?
About being graphic designer.
Is we are the middlemen. We're the meat in the sandwich.
Yeah.
So we translate the client to speak to the audience. And that's when things like logos and marketing and brochures all becomes kind of relevant. But first year is really about this. You can worry about logos and that letterheads and business cards later. You've got to know how to do this first. And this is why we're having this. Anyway, this is all in the screen recording as well. It'll be up on something. So, let's look at some examples. The first one, the Red Cross. The first denotative meaning, medical assistance. Quite straightforward. The connotative one, Well, the simple one is rescue and safety from harm. And there's a sentence, paragraph down there, and that in Japan, in Tokyo, during the Second World War, people realised that this meant that hospitals don't get bombed. It wasn't about people being rescued, it was, shit, bombs don't fall around there. So every roof in Tokyo had a red cross painted on it because they thought that this symbol, they had their own connotative meaning. I mean, there's other ways to think about it, you know, that lovely white field with the red cross. It also reminds me of nurses' uniforms and things. Yeah, thank you. But it also, in terms of a connotative meaning, it can relate to Western oppression. So, who was talking about the Illuminati before? Yeah, we're getting close there now, aren't we? Again, this is a symbol taken from the Crusades. The Holy Roman Crusades in the early part of the 11th century have caused us 1,000 years worth of problems, and it may even be another 1,000 years worth of problems. And basically it was all to do with unemployment. But we can talk about that another time. This comes from that. The word hospital comes from an order of knights called the Hospitallers. That was their symbol. The Knights Templar, who were the greater body, who had this band of knights, they wore that on their tunics. A tunic was a piece of cloth that went over the full suit of armour. Basic suit of armour weighed between 20 to 30 kilograms in the pounding heat and chainmail. Anyway. And it means that as well. And you'll see that symbol every time you see an ambulance. Because inside there's a thing called the Maltese cross, which is the symbol of who? No, St. John's ambulance. The poor knights of St. John are the Templars. There's a 1,000-year line right there. So we can count it back the other way. The cross, the Maltese cross, is all to do with a thing called the Siege of Malta, and that's one of the best stories ever written. But we don't need to deal with that. So the Hospitallers became now what is the Order of St. John after several centuries of protracted warfare. Still in use and are more friendly guys today. So here is a symbol washed clean. But again, the original aspect of this group is once one of war, death and piracy. Now, we're in a mass media world these days. Who's done media studies? A couple of people. So you folk know all about this. The pervasion of the written word and television and radio. The way that imagery has become so instrumentally more powerful in the 20th century. If there was TV in those days, maybe this sign could still be as toxic as the swastika today. The swastika had its turn when there was cinemas and television. There was television back in the 30s and 40s. It was just mainly centred around Europe. So, if we need to mean this outside of Western societies, it comes to occupy another form. The Red Cross in the Middle East is also known as the Red Crescent. Because of its history, because of these 1,000 years of problem, it's politically difficult, the sign of the cross. So it becomes the crescent. It has the same social value, but us as Westerners, we probably don't feel it as much. And that's the important thing about context and science. But sadly, some people may see this as that, and that's as equally as wrong as all of our other situations. So how can there be one symbol that is universal. We'll put to one side the conversation why we need one sign that's universal, because we don't have one language, we don't have one form of writing. I think people are just trying to be graphically simplistic about what we're trying to do here. But in places where there is an equal amount of cultures, so you'll see here high concentrations of religious extremism, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I'm not calling them extremists, but they really believe in their way of seeing things, and the other people are wrong. I mean, we probably, when you grow old, you will feel that politically. You know, this party is more correct, but the opposition, they're a bunch of swear words. So if we look at a place called Israel, it's difficult for them to have either of those signs. So that's why we get to this thing. It's called the red crystal. And the crystal's kind of nice because they're precious and they're fragile, such as people are. So that's considered an apolitical symbol. It means the same things. But as a symbol, no, I haven't seen it used anywhere yet. Okay, example number 2. The cowboy boot, a historical link to pioneering days in the American West. It stands not only for footwear or dry feet, but it means other things. Being a man, being a hero. These made a great big impression in the early 1980s when everybody across the States was wearing cowboy boots. People who lived in New York that had never been to the country were wearing cowboy boots. And the reason why is because they became culturally significant because of the TV show Dallas, which none of you may have seen. It's just a soap opera about rich people being bastards to each other because of oil. There we go. That sums up 3 or 4 series quite easily. But there was this virility, this free, open, Rome-wide spaces. And of course, there's always the whole mythology of cowboy films. And so the seldom talking, beating evil, woman swooning, absolute alpha male. And I guess people wanted to occupy that space. Having self-direction and therefore personal power. The reason why the cowboy boot is so damn high, could anyone guess? What's that? Can't hear. Hide your gun. No. You
chafing against the horse's side.
That's true. That's one side. And the other one is so you don't get bitten by snakes. Because, you know, it's quite easy. There's some big veins in the ankle. Bang, you're dead. So there aren't many snakes in New York, although that could be metaphorically argued. Being part of a larger community of people that work the land. So you're honest, you're true, you're a real being. You're not a lawyer, you're not an accountant, you're not one of them, you're not one of the problem makers. You're part of the foundation. Recognizing and celebrating part of a certain historical mythology. So you're more American because you wear your cowboy boots because all Americans were cowboys. The history of America is really quite problematic and troubling. There were only a few cowboys, and they were mostly people from Mexico, so they were Spanish. They weren't really white people. We have this strange tainted view. Anyone see the film Django Unchained? Yeah, that helps perpetuate a lot of mythologies, but it also breaks a few down. Whoops. Being an outlaw, being against the man, being honest and genuine, but not accepting authority, which is this word here of being a maverick. A maverick is the name that's given to a cattle that will not run with the pack. So in the New Zealand idiom, you're not one of the sheep. You're going your own way. All because of the shoe. I'm an individual. Sorry, everyone's wearing these shoes. You're a sheep. It's like the flannel shirt in the 1990s. before the whole grunge thing exploded quite nastily into this commercial playground, you could buy a good flannel shirt for $9 that would keep you warm in winter and would last you a couple of years. Suddenly, playing 5 chords and jumping around with long hair becomes extremely popular, and then you see the same shirt being sold in St. Luke's for $90. But people are wearing them to be individuals. Example 3, the 4-wheel drive. Freedom, ruggedness, being able to go anywhere, anytime, safety from the wild. Climb that hill you cannot climb, cross that river you cannot cross. It's like having your own little TARDIS. And the vehicle isn't pretty, it's functional, it's utility, it's almost got a Soviet aesthetic to it. It's deliciously ugly, and it can get the shit beaten out of it. Yeah, who wants one of those? It's like having your own personal tank. There's a tribal association, though. I have a Range Rover because I want to be like the other Range Rover owners. It's like the flannel shirt again. Outdoor pursuits. So we can't see it, but where there's Range Rovers, often there are horse floats. That means often there is money. So class, structure, expectation, and that's a big one, expectation, because with the horses there's like, oh, I've got to have the Range Rover now. And I've heard people say that, which is the most interesting thing. Oh no, I can't get the Toyota, I have to get the Range Rover. I mean, and you know what? I guess I'm in the same category as well, because I won't own a PC, I'll own a Mac, because it's more designery. Do you say user? No, I'm hearing you say user. I'm being deliberately deaf. But essentially, it's like anything. It's not the tool, it's what it produces. Example 3, the 4-wheel drive. Power, elite, city wanker. Yeah. Domination. Domination of the road, at least. You know, Ponsonby, other parts of Auckland, very small roads. Why do you need a vehicle that takes up both lanes? Class, perception, shopping, children, certain suburbs. What suburb? Yeah, where else? Where else? Yeah. No one said Manurewa. No one said Hillcrest.
Avondale.
I don't know if I've ever seen a 4-wheel drive in Avondale yet. Certain suburbs, waste, environmental factors, 3 tons of metal, 3 Toyota Starlets could be pulled out of that, let alone the size of its engine. Snobbery, and finally, of course, stupidity. You spend how much on what? But of course, when we say that, we mean that, don't we? Because we call that. So therefore that equals that. There's this is the best semiotic relationship. You know, we say, you're in your shopping trolley. And we all suddenly think not of that, but of a 4-wheel drive. But not any kind of 4-wheel drive, but a stupidly overpriced, that's never seen the dirt 4-wheel drive that's used to drive one kid to school. Yeah? So there's there's connotation. Yeah, and then to McDonald's. Yeah, McDonald's for breakfast and then to school. But there's connotation. When we say this word, we think these things. And that's what graphic design needs to do. We use very, very simple means. If we look at this poster, you know, they're using these forms to sum up all of New Zealand as something special and unique. We don't look at it and go, cooking. We look at it and think New Zealand, even if we cut that bottom piece off. We would probably even think of what city. It's more of a town, though. When we see that, where do we think?
I think Post-stamp.
Post-stamp? Yeah. No particular town in New Zealand?
Rotorua.
Yeah, but it doesn't say that. Yet we kind of attune ourselves to that. All right. Here's some words. Symbolic signs. And so you can talk about the symbolic in your analysis. And symbolism. Signs where the relationship between a signifier and signified is purely conventional and culturally specific. What word's that? Who said what? Anyone else? Why doesn't it say mate? Why isn't it the Maori word for death? Oh, but when I say mate, am I talking about pal or am I talking about fucking? Or am I talking about how two mechanical things join perfectly? Context. Audience. So talking about typeface and all relationship to that. Obviously, I've set the two apart in a very cliched form. But even if we just read these as squiggle value, word, and visual value, typeface, when we have Remuera represented like this, we think of maybe a church. If we think of South Auckland in this way, and there really isn't a South Auckland. No one knows where the line is between North Auckland and South Auckland. It's just a concept. But we think of maybe a country club in Clevedon or something like that. Again, there's wine and cheese. Here there are hard wooden benches and the smell of incense, perhaps. If we swap the two over, if we had South Auckland and this typeface here, we'd be thinking of gang culture. And if we had Remuera in this typeface, we'd be thinking of some millinery store or interior decorators, that kind of malarkey. Who, me? Party! Whose party? Goth party. All right.
Children's party.
Shh, you're ruining it. This typeface says something. Could be the Nazi party. It's not a birthday party. Simple and easy. What we say with our typeface says more than just the word. And again, the way we use our words, all uppercase, sounds like we're shouting. Could you please take that outside, thank you? Is it a bottle of champagne or is it a cigarette? It seems to... Whoops, one too many. It seems to be the cigarette more than the bottle of champagne. Could you take that outside, please? Thank you. So, connotation, denotation. Iconic signs. This is getting to the second step of semiotics, when we're getting a little bit more deeper into it. When one thing, one signifier, signs where the signifier resembles the signified. So, a tree is an icon, not of a tree, duh, but an icon of a forest. So you could have forest and bird as a word, and then a tree. And the tree acts as an icon. If we think about the process of medieval icon painting, all icon paintings are about one thing and one thing only, and that is God. But it keeps on reflected time and time and time again. It's the faces of the saints, the faces of Jesus. But it's always back to this invisible, very difficult topic. So that's why they're called icons. So he's falling asleep or looking at your watch. Indexical signs. Where the signifier is caused by the signified. That's a bit tricky. But when the sign leads on to another thing. Let's just simplify it a bit. So where there's smoke, there's... Yeah, exactly. So we could have something that was in your title signatures. If there was text that involved smoke. it would be very evocative of something. Maybe smoking, maybe fire engines. Synecdoche, a kind of connotation in which a part is used for a whole. The definition's easier than the word. Because when we look at dog tags, we think of what? Army, yeah, the military, service. Same as we saw in a synecdoche that we've already seen was in the 6 foot under title sequence with the toe tag. Dead. No longer a person, but an object. Mentimony, I used this word before, and I talked about this exact image. So the mentimony here in that image is to do with the idea of condoms, because they're in condom-looking packages. Americans call condoms rubbers. Tires are made out of rubber. These tires are very safe because condoms relate to safe sex. So it's a very big conversation. There's quite a few ideas going on here. But this is graphic design. This is very clever advertising. Because you could say that with a whole bunch of words, but why do it when you can say it with one image? It's that whole 1,000 words idea. A kind of connotation where one sign is substituted for another, which is closely associated. I'll leave it at that. Collections of related connotations can either be bound together either by, boy, I wrote that sentence badly, paradigmatic relationships. It's not in my paradigm. So here we have a gas tank and war and peace. What are we talking about? Yeah. There's no word saying oil there, but we pick it up. What part of the world are we in? Apart from anywhere where there's oil. You know, this is a Middle Eastern context. A kind of connotation in which a part is used for a whole. Now, I was trying to be something as political and subtle. Glink, 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 glink. Hang on, we're nearly there. One more, two more. There. I was doing the same thing because I think one political party is a bunch of liars because I have my own political opinion. So just to wrap it up, hey, we went through a lot of slides. Mentimony, paradigms, symptomatic relations, where signs get meaning from their sequential order, grammar or sequence of events that they make up a story. What's the story there?
Evolution of man.
And then
And
it starts again. Yeah, someone said Planet of the Apes. That's a really, really good relationship there. I mean, that's the way that we could explain the whole film. Nice. Myths. Going back, a myth is a semiotic relationship. And again, we have the cowboy myth. The hero rides into town. He's a man alone. There's a group of evil people. They do something bad. A woman is crying. A child dies. The hero looks after, takes care of the villain. The people of the town gather around the hero. The hero leaves the town and walks into the sunset. That is the cowboy myth. Codes. A combination of semiotic systems or a super system that function as general maps of meaning. So cathedrals, really, really good example. You have on the outside of the cathedral the filigree and demons and gargoyles of this physical world. But you go inside the cathedral and you enter the world of eternity, which has a totally different sense. And this is, I really mean this within Gothic architecture. You have high vaulted ceilings, you have a lot of light, you have a good smell. this world and the next. And then ideologies, codes that reinforce or are congruent with structures of power. Ideology works largely by creating forms of common sense, so you could say brainwashing of the taken for granted in everyday life. Yes, you're poor, you have to line up for 6 hours for a loaf of bread, but we are all communists. We are all in this together. The symbol binds us. And that's that. Are there any questions? Have I said too much? All right. Yep, you can have a 15-minute break. I do hope that was recorded. And we'll go on to an exercise in about, when you get back, 15 minutes.